Hello everyone, I am Dinh, the PhD student from the National School of Architecture of Toulouse in France. Today I present my study with entitled Urban Morphology and the Case Study of French concession Tourane in Vietnam from 1888 to 1950. The development of the urban space of Tourane city, or today Da Nang city, began with commercial activity along the bank of the Han River, where indigenous people had their first contact with the foreign traders. The French were not the first foreigner to recognize the role of the land. However, with the periods of their domination in the city, French planning has an obvious impact on the development of urban morphology of Tourane. This study aims to highlight the characteristics, role, and significant impact of France on the process of urban development and social transformation of Tourane during the French colonial period from 1888 to 1950. My study includes four principal parts. First, introduction. Second, urban morphology and the study of former French colonies, followed by urban morphology evolution, case study of French concession Tourane from 1888 to 1950s. Finally, a discussion and references. Let's begin with the first part of this study, introduction. Study the planning of colonial cities is an area of research that needs a combination of variety of data and tools aimed to explore the formation and development of the city in specific historical contexts. The colonies were the places where the colonial empire expanded their territory, spread their cultures, exploited and enriched their economy, and so on. The Western style of expansion were in many respects quite different. That were the cases of the Spanish, Portuguese, Dutch, British, French, German, Belgian or Italian. Kind of territory or civilization encounters are also affected the evolving urban form. This happened in most of European colonies, of course include the peninsular Indochina of Vietnam, Laos and Cambodia. The city of Da Nang or Tourane in French is a city with the formation and the development associated with the presence of the French during their rule from 1888 to 1950s. In case of Tourane, knowledge of the urban evolution of the cities is relatively limited, incomplete, and insufficient. In fact, Tourane was the most important city in central Vietnam during the French colonial periods in terms of economy. Then it is necessary to clearly define the role and impact of the French on the urban formation and development of Tourane. The result of this research, due to study of urban morphology, clarify the characteristics of urban evolution of the French concession Tourane during their domination, include the urban spatial layout, land use, and urban form. In the next part, urban morphology and the study of former French colonies will be presented. The concept of urban morphology were presented by many planners and researchers. It is the study of the form of human settlement and the process of their formation and transformation, as mentioned by Mudong in 1997. Map or similar drawing are basic input for analyzing the arrangement of functional area of the city, as well as elements that contribute to urban landscape. A study of urban morphology deals with physical form of a city during its movement and the comparison comparison between different cities of similar condition. Moreover, this subfield studies the impact between the social form and the physical layout of a city in a dual-way mutual relationship. Besides natural and local characteristics, urban form evolution of a colony strongly depends on the policy of the colonists. The colonists also play a superior role in every aspect of colonial life. The French colonial empire is constituted from overseas colonies, protectorates, and mandate territories under French rule from the 16th century onwards. It is divided into First Colonial Empire after 1534 and the Second Colonial Empire after 1830. The six characteristics of French policy in colonies and its implications can be referred from the study of Muller in 2000. 1. The policy of assimilation through destruction and high-side construction. 2. The segregation on status basis. 3. The illusion of independence. 4. The rigid functional zoning of European quarter of the colonial township. 5. The policy of non-interference of indigenous culture. And finally, colonies were considered part of France. In part 3, the case study of French concession Tourane will be analyzed, in the focus on urban morphology evolution within the periods of French domination from 1888 to 1950. The history of Tourane associated with the movement southwards of the Vietnamese. The first villages had been established and were relatively well organized. The population were not numerous in this wide area and the settlement was concentrated. It was only when Tourane received more contact with foreign traders, the land had a good development opportunity. The first French in Tourane from the 17th century were missionaries. According to reports from the missionary about advantages of the port of Tourane and its local products, France has an obvious interest in Vietnam. It was also because of the need to expand effort in the Far East, since Vietnam was a prosperous land and had not been influenced by any Western country. Following the Treaty 1888, the first concession border of the French in Tourane includes 5 villages and all located on the left bank of the river. In an attempt to enlarge the city, the French put their pressure on the Vietnamese Feudal Kingdom to sign the treaty in 1901, with cities forcing other villages to the French. From this concession territory, the first French urban planner applied the pattern of a European city, following the Greek plan, gradually install urban infrastructure, organize the functional area, and build colonial construction to serve their long-term plan here. When analyzing the map of the development of Tourane road networks on the background of natural elements, the following characteristics were noticed for the link between the natural barrier and the construction of the city. During the construction of the first installation from 1888 to 1918, the French took advantage of the relatively flat land located on the west bank of the river. The choice of road direction during this period limited intervention on natural elements as dune or swamp. In the next phase from 1919 to 1939, With the need to expand the city, new roads were constructed to connect the more distant domain toward the bank of the river or the central area. During the last periods from 1940 to 1950, the new roads were principally small and short roads for the completion of existing neighborhoods. Many urban projects require physical intervention on the natural element, leveling the dune, leveling all or a part of the pond and swamplands. In terms of road opening, this research selects the year of 1918, 1939 and 1950 to assess the basic characteristics of the French transport system, including streets and railway. During the first phase, the French built 28 new streets in the center of Tourane. This number reached 32 streets at the end of the second phase and 44 streets in the last year in Tourane. The street network was planned in a grid plan with the first two principal axes. The north-south axis connect the city center to the south and the east-west axis connect the city to the west. They are the basics of the axis for the streets built later. Almost the streets of Tourane during the French rule, 64%, were built during the first phase, and they form the basic pattern of the street system. Only a few of them, 9%, were built in the second phase. The last 27% were built in the last phase as additional streets in the central area. Besides, the railway system covers the center boundaries east, north, and west to avoid crossing points between the streets and the railway. This system links the havens along the river to the loading dock to the north and to the main station to the west. Regarding urban land uses, from the end of the 19th century, Tourane were basically planned according to the standards of a French colonial municipalities with basic functional area: administrative, residential, recreational, commercial, and industrial area. The map and the photo describe the distribution of functional area in the city center. We can see from the map, the quarter of Asian and European were distributed on the two sides of the city. The commercial was located in the center. It plays the role as the natural boundary between the Asian and the European. Besides, the military camp and recreational area was distributed next to the administrative area. In case of Tourane, the urban central blocks, particularly the block along the river, were the places where most of the value architecture were made during the French colonial periods. The urban fabric of Tourane Central were built for this area, about 2 kilometers long in the north-south direction and less than 400 meters in the east-west direction from the bank. The urban fabrics illustrate the distribution of building, public works, and railing on the blocks of the center of Tourane during the colonial urban evolution. In addition, this map also helps clarify the link between the set, the network of parks or streets, the land division of lots, and the construction of the building. Finally, some other conclusion and discussion can be summarized from the study of Tourane colonial urban morphology evolution. Basically, the urban development of Tourane in the French route followed the concept of a French colonial municipality in the late 19th and the early 20th centuries. The complete abolition of indigenous villages by a new city of European standards. The floating of French culture with imported architecture and the brand new urban lifestyle. Urban planning were in great pattern, developing from riverbanks along north-south and east-west axes. The urban land uses of the central area consisted of five main areas. There was a clear separation between the European area and the Asian area or the area of indigenous people. The personal characteristics of Tourane can be explained. First, the restriction on some functional area like recreational area and industrial area were due to the small European population and the nature of a maritime transshipment city. In addition, it was possible to include the projects that intended to supply more park and entertainment area for the city, but could not be implemented finally. Second, the advantage of waterway and maritime transportation had created a bustling city with many racial groups involved in trade activities. In particular, the indigenous Vietnamese were even strongly competed by other Asian like the Chinese and somewhat Indian. This research is only the first step in understanding the nature of French planning as the concession Tourane. To clarify the role of the French in the urban evolution of Tourane, it is necessary to clarify its work that have been done in each phase of its development in the specific context of French Indochina's in history. Similar studies are required for other French colonial cities during the Second French colonial empire. From there, it will draw more overview about the nature of the morphological development of French colonial cities and Tourane in particular. Here is a list of some references cited in this study. And finally, is the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention.